Hello and welcome. This is the Market Wrap. I am Agam Vakil. After the kind of strength that we saw yesterday, today's day of trade led to be some loss for the benchmark indices. We must remember it certainly was an expiry, which is why we may have had some rollover action to play through. But if you leave that aside, there was weakness. And among the gainers, let's talk about that. Ultratech Cement rising another 5.5%. It's a good day of trade. It's up 10% in the last 3 days. Grasim Industries and Dr. Reddy's Laboratories also advancing in trade. And while Bharti Airtel is advanced by as much as 2.5%, we're seeing very sharp cuts for Bharti Infratel. And we'll talk about that in just a bit. Tata Steel and Vedanta from the metals pack bearing down on the index, and Maruti Suzuki on account of disappointing guidance or outlook for the upcoming financial year, where it suggested the growth is around between 4 to 8%. We'll talk about that in a little more detail, but let's also take a look at the broader markets. And once again, we've seen a little bit of a reversal when it comes to the advance decline ratio on the NSE 500. 2 gainers for 3 losers. Indiabulls Real Estate stands out with gains returning to Vakrangi, Aavas Financiers, as well as Indiabulls Ventures, along with JK Lakshmi Cement advancing in trade. Of course, on the losing end, we have Reliance Communication, which continues to, trend downwards, and Rain Industries, along with Adani Power and SJVN, among others, which are moving, buzzing towards the downside. But I'm going to bring in our markets editor, Neeraj Shah, on that note for his thoughts. Neeraj, what perspective?
Anybody's guess, isn't it, right? Yesterday, we were up and about in the session. I think today the fever of those rumors has died down, and maybe the expiry-led moves coming into play. Not that too many people are anticipating that. I must tell you, I mean, experts that we spoke at 1 o'clock, at 2 o'clock, 2:30, etc., nobody was quite anticipating that there will be a sharp downtick like this led by banks, but it has happened. Expiry-led, I would reckon. The world markets were not an unhappy place, so don't quite know what's the follow-up on that front here on. But one thing that you can see is that this earnings season, the reaction to bad numbers is chalk and cheese. Usually we see a very sharp reaction on bad numbers which are proven. Maruti, for example, bad numbers, slightly weak guidance. You'll talk more about it. Jatin will come in, best placed person to speak about it. Someone dwell too much on it, but it didn't fall like 9 pence. I mean, maybe it's because it had a bit of a fall already. But Bharti Infratel, there was nothing. Yes, it was a bad number, but the devil was maybe in the detail, but it was all exposed. But the better part of the trading day didn't do too much, ending the day 10% lower. So I think it's very interesting, the reactions that we're seeing to some of the numbers in this earnings season too, at the broader end of the spectrum, Mahindra Financial, for example. So interesting to see what happens. Guessing it will all be about numbers, because otherwise it all looks all okay.
Okay, well, fair enough, Neeraj. Thanks for getting us that perspective. So, as Neeraj just put it, we are seeing some very varied moves and reactions to a lot of earnings out there. Some very extreme and some not quite so. And of course, so we're going to keep an eye on the futures and options trends that will be thrown up once we see the power copy come in later on this week. But let's talk about the biggest of the earnings today. We have Maruti Suzuki. And it reported earnings. We saw a little bit of a reaction, but I'm going to leave it to Yatin Mota to tell us a little more about the same. Yatin?
A disappointing quarter, Agam. We knew that Q4 was slow for auto companies. In general, the expectation was for a muted earning number, but to the analyst consensus, Maruti clearly was a miss. If you look at the intraday chart also, the stock was under pressure. Of course, post the results got some gains coming in. But at the end of the day, almost shut the shop at the day's low. Of course, this was about a short covering, but weak numbers for Maruti. More importantly, if you look at the revenue performance, that was only up 1.4%. Profits were down 5%. Of course, that was boosted by a one-time tax reversal, which the company disclosed in the footnotes. EBITDA was also down 25% on absolute basis for Maruti Suzuki. And look at the margins, came in at 10.6%. Versus the Bloomberg consensus expectations of 12.5%. The management, commentary was also slightly muted. The overall sales and production guidance for FY20 for Maruti stood at 4 to 8%. So that is a band in which they are expecting the production sales to grow. If you look at brokerages like CLSA for FY20, they were estimating a sales growth in excess of 10%. That is a volume growth, and the management is now guiding for a full year of 4 to 8% kind of a range in terms of growth. So let's see how really does the analyst community react post the earnings in terms of their ratings, target price, and earnings estimates moving forward.
Okay, yeah, then thanks for that perspective. So we will be watching out for analyst reactions here. And the other stock that we want to address was Ultratech Cement, because we did see another very sharp up move there. I'm going to bring in Nikki Mirchandani to talk to us about the same. Nikki.
It's a good move for Ultratech Cement. Typically it's not surprising to me because last time around also Ultratech Cement reported good set of numbers, and we saw the stock reacting significantly after that good set of earnings. So clearly the fears that the cost saving measures would not come through in Q4 were being allayed after Ultratech Cement reported solid set of numbers on back of those cost saving metrics. Across the board we saw HSBC, CLSA, Investec, all of them brokerages, while maintaining their rating on the stock, actually went ahead and hiked the target price for Ultratech, suggesting that there should be more rally or more room to this upside from what we've been noticing right now. But then the brokerages also highlighted that despite being a good quarter, they're somewhat concerned with the kind of utilizations that have been picking up with Ultratech Cement, and they'd like to watch out at the valuations because they remain at a premium as compared to the 10-year averages. So that's clearly one thing that we like to keep an eye out, apart from good set of earnings that have been reported by the company.
Right. Nikki, thank you for joining us and getting us those updates. As you can see, Ultratech Cement has moved considerably higher in the last 3 odd sessions, so we'll be watching out for that. But let's shift focus to Bharti Infratel then. And very quickly, as we were mentioning, the stock has closed down by as much as 10.5%. And this is after the earnings which have come, and they were poor. But as Neeraj was mentioning, the earnings were not as alarming that they would will result into a reaction of a decline of around 10%. That said, it is a sharp decline when it comes to some of its key factors in its earnings. And on a drop which is higher in a very long period of time. But again, as I was suggesting, some stocks have seen very sharp reactions and some stocks have not seen, reactions have not been as sharp. Of course, we're going to have lots more coming in when it comes to earnings. We are expecting earnings from Tata Steel and Axis Bank as well. And we're going to keep an eye on that, which in these two stocks will certainly have a bearing on the index too. Along that note, it's a wrap on the markets, but lots more lined up. Stay tuned to Bloomberg Mint.